I earn $120,000 a year, and my family expects me to share it all. So, a little background. I, 29 million, recently got a promotion at work that came with a major pay bump. I went from making around $60,000 a year to $120,000, which feels surreal. I've been working crazy hours for years, making sacrifices in my social life and staying up late to improve my skills and network. This promotion feels like validation for all those sleepless nights, you know? I was really excited to share the news with my family, thinking they'd be proud and celebrate with me. But when I told them, the reaction was different than I expected. My parents were happy at first, but then the conversation shifted. My dad started mentioning that my sister is struggling financially, and my mom hinted that now I could finally help them out more. I already help pay for my parents' mortgage and sometimes give my sister money when she's in a tight spot, but I didn't think my promotion would mean I'd be expected to do even more. The kicker was last weekend when I visited them, and my sister asked if I could co-sign on a car loan she wanted. I hesitated, and she got defensive, saying, "It's not like you can't afford it now." I tried explaining that I still need to be smart with my money, especially since I have student loans and I'm saving for a house. But she was visibly upset, and my parents took her side, making me feel like I was the bad guy for not immediately offering to help. I'm honestly torn. I love my family and want to be there for them, but I feel like they see my success as a free pass for their own financial choices. I didn't work all these years just to have my money drained by family guilt trips. Am I being selfish, or do they need to respect my boundaries? Comment. Dude, I totally get where you're coming from. My family was the same way when I got my first big job. The expectation that, since you're making more, you have to help out, can feel so heavy, especially when it's thrown at you with guilt. It's like they don't see how much you've worked to get there and just expect that you'll sacrifice your goals for their needs. Setting boundaries is definitely not selfish, it's smart. If you don't, the financial burden can get out of control fast. I made the mistake of co-signing for my brother's car, and guess who ended up making payments when he couldn't? Spoiler alert, it was me. So stick to your guns and stay clear about your priorities. Future you will thank you. Comment. Man, reading this hit close to home. I was in a similar situation a couple of years ago, and it was honestly one of the toughest balancing acts I've ever had to manage. When I landed a higher-paying job, my family started seeing my salary as family money, like it was just a shared pot that anyone could dip into whenever they needed. At first, it was small things, like covering family dinners or sending money if someone needed a little extra. I didn't mind because I was genuinely happy to help. But then it escalated. My younger brother, who's always been a bit irresponsible with his finances, asked me to co-sign on a personal loan so he could start a business. I said no, explaining that I wasn't comfortable tying my credit to his financial choices. My parents and even some extended family got on my case, saying that family supports family and that I was lucky to be in a position to help him out. When I stood firm, they basically painted me as the villain who was choosing money over family. It was incredibly hurtful because I love my family, but I also wanted to make smart decisions and build a solid future. I've come to realize that a lot of people don't fully understand boundaries, especially around money, until they're clearly stated. Sometimes they only see what you have now, without considering what you need to save for, like a house, retirement, or emergencies. What helped me was having a serious conversation with my family. I laid out my financial goals and explained why I couldn't take on the responsibility of being a financial safety net for everyone. It wasn't easy, and some were upset at first, but eventually they understood. It sounds like you're trying to do the same, and honestly, you're doing the right thing. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you don't care about them. It means you care about your future. You've put in the work to get where you are, and you shouldn't have to jeopardize your financial stability for anyone else's poor decisions. If your family can't see that, it's on them, not you. My best friend asked me for a loan, but he's always spending like he's rich. All right, here's the situation. I have a best friend, Ryan, who I've known since high school. We've been tight for years, so I know him really well. Recently, he hit me up, saying he was in a tight spot with his finances and asked if I could lend him $5,000 to help him cover some bills. At first, I didn't think twice about it. He's my best friend, right? But then I remembered, Ryan's always spending like he's loaded. Every time we go out, he's buying drinks for everyone, dropping money on designer clothes, and showing off the latest tech he just had to buy. Meanwhile, I know he has a decent paying job, but he's definitely not making six figures. I've tried to bring up money management with him in the past, but he always brushes it off, saying, "You only live once," or that he'll figure it out later. Now, I don't want to sound like a bad friend, but I work hard to save and plan for my future. I budget, I've got an emergency fund, and I've made sacrifices to get where I am. It feels unfair that he's asking me to bail him out just because he doesn't take finances seriously. But I also know he's in a bind, and part of me feels guilty for even hesitating. Would it be wrong to say no? Or should I loan him the money and risk never seeing it again? I'm genuinely torn. First off, you're not wrong for feeling conflicted here. Lending money to friends, especially when you know they're not financially responsible, is tough. A few things to consider. 1. If you're not okay with potentially losing this money, it might be best not to lend it. When friends don't repay loans, it can damage the relationship, and $5,000 is a lot to put at risk. 2. One approach could be offering your support in a way that doesn't involve cash. Maybe you could sit down with him to go over his finances and help him set up a budget, or suggest resources that can help him manage his spending better. Sometimes people need guidance more than a handout, especially if they're used to overspending. 3. If you do decide to loan him the money, consider setting up a formal agreement with repayment terms. This may seem like overkill, but having things in writing protects both of you and prevents misunderstandings. Plus, it might make him think twice about borrowing if he's not serious about paying you back. Lastly, if he's in a real emergency, another option could be giving a smaller, one-time gift rather than a loan. This way, you're offering help without setting yourself up for financial loss, and you can be clear that it's a one-time thing. You're a good friend for even considering this. Just make sure that whatever you decide, it doesn't come at the expense of your own financial well-being or your friendship. Title: My coworker found out my salary and now everything's awkward. So I, 27F, recently got promoted at work, which came with a decent salary increase. I went from making around $55,000 to $75,000, and I was pretty excited since I've been working hard to move up in my career. I didn't tell anyone about the raise because, honestly, I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. The problem started when my coworker, Sarah, 30F, who's been with the company for about the same amount of time as me, somehow found out about my new salary. I have no idea how she figured it out. Maybe she saw something she wasn't supposed to, or someone slipped up and mentioned it. Anyway, she came up to me one day, looking visibly annoyed, and asked, "Is it true that you're making $75,000 now?" I was completely caught off guard and didn't know how to respond. I kind of shrugged it off and said something vague like, "I don't really feel comfortable discussing salaries." But she kept pushing, asking why I'm making more than her and what special treatment I got to earn that kind of money. The thing is, I've been putting in extra hours, handling high-stakes projects, and taking on additional responsibilities that Sarah hasn't. I've really worked hard for this raise. Since then, Sarah has been noticeably cold towards me. She barely talks to me now and makes passive-aggressive comments whenever I mention anything related to work. I feel like I shouldn't have to apologize for earning what I worked hard for, but the tension is making things really uncomfortable. I'm not sure how to handle it without making things worse. Am I being unreasonable, or is there a way to make this situation less awkward? After Sarah's reaction, I started noticing other little things that made me feel even more uncomfortable. A few days ago, she made a snide remark in front of another coworker about how some people just get everything handed to them, and I could tell she was aiming it at me. I wanted to defend myself, but I held back to avoid escalating things in front of others. I'm torn about what to do next. Part of me wants to sit down with Sarah and clear the air, maybe explain that my raise came from a combination of hard work and taking on extra responsibilities. But another part of me worries that it'll just fuel her resentment. It's like I'm stuck in a no-win situation where addressing it might only make her more bitter, and ignoring it just lets the negativity fester. I really don't want this to become a long-term issue, but I also don't feel like I should have to defend my achievements. Has anyone dealt with something similar?